everyone could find a seat, we're going to begin the services. Good afternoon, and thank you for attending the life celebration of Edna Harris. She would be absolutely thrilled and surprised to see so many people here today. My name is Patrick, and I am Edna's oldest grandson. My grandmother had an amazing long life, and she wanted her services to be a celebration. So to honor that, as you'll note in your programs, later in the ceremony we'll be opening the floor for anyone to share a story or memory of Edna. First, we'd like to call up Ava, wife of Edna's grandson Zachary, to read an excerpt from Khalil Gibran's The Prophet, titled On Work.
And what is it to work with love? It is to weave the cloth with the threads drawn from your heart, even as if your beloved were to wear that cloth. It is to build a house with affection, even as if your beloved were to dwell in that house. It is to sow seeds with tenderness and reap the harvest with joy, even as if your beloved were to eat the fruit. It is to charge all things you fashion with the breath of your own spirit, and to know that all the blessed dead are standing about you and watching. Often have I heard you say, as if speaking in sleep, "He who works in marble and finds the shape of his own soul in the stone is nobler than he who plows the soil. And he who seizes the rainbow to lay it on a cloth in the likeness of man is more than he who makes the sandals for our feet. But I say, not in sleep, but in the over-wakefulness of noontide, that the wind speaks not more sweetly to the giant oaks than to the least of all the blades of grass. And he alone is great, who turns the voice of the wind into a song made sweeter by his own loving. Work is love made visible. And if you cannot work with love, but only with distaste, it is better that you should leave your work and sit at the gate of the temple and take alms of those who work with joy."
Thank you, Ava. At this time, we'll hear some thoughts from Edna's oldest daughter, Andrea, read by Andrea's daughter and Edna's granddaughter, Rachel.
I think the quality that I most admired about my mom was her sense of volunteering. From an early age, I realized that she was a helper. She volunteered at church, she volunteered at our school, and she was a Girl Scout leader before I was even old enough to be in Girl Scouts. When we were in elementary school, Mom would pick us up from school on Wednesdays. We would change our clothes in the car. This was back when there were school clothes, church clothes, and play clothes. And we would drive to a church in Camden. Mom would unlock the doors, and kids from the neighborhood would come inside and head to a roller skating rink in the basement. They skated for hours, and Mom would give them a snack, and then they would head home. She didn't know these kids, nor did she attend the church. I think that's the moment when I realized what a volunteer was. And she continued to do that throughout her life, and she got so much enjoyment from it. That's a pretty good role model.
Thank you, Rachel. When Gongs turned 79, she decided that she should quickly make plans for her final services because 80 was coming up, and 80 was really, really old. She made the plans for a traditional service, but then when she turned 85, she decided she wanted a life celebration instead. Not a sad gathering, but a joyful remembrance. She felt she had lived a long and interesting life, and she wanted it celebrated. She was explicit in that she wanted the people who were here today to be given the opportunity to stand up and share a story about her. Something that made you laugh, how she impacted your life, or anything you would like to share. Because we all know there are lots of stories. So at this time, is there anyone who would like to share something about Edna? You may talk from your seat. You do not need to come up to the podium.
So Gongs was a very good off-the-cuff speaker. It wasn't always true stories what she was telling you, but she could just get up and talk. I can't, so I wrote some of my thoughts down over the last month when I've had time to kind of think about the effect that Gongs has had on my life. So I'd like to share them with you today. Gongs was my grandmother. Apparently, grandmom was too hard to say, so she became Gong Gong, which eventually shortened to Gongs. I think it's fitting because she wasn't really a granny. She was a spunky, tell it how it is, take on the world kind of woman. In my 42 years on this planet, I haven't experienced life without her yet. But during those 42 years, she has taught me a lifetime of lessons. Lesson 1, always be open to try new things. Even if it involves crossing the Wissahickon River with your young granddaughters, losing your car keys in the river, and needing to involve the police to get you all home. Lesson 2, be confident. When on stage, you are the boss. No one knows what you are supposed to say or do, so whatever comes out of your mouth, sell it. Lesson 3, push boundaries. Just because the sign says you have to have a vehicle to go through the drive-through bank doesn't mean you can't walk up to the window and ask to make a withdrawal anyway. Lesson 4, be honest. I was living at her house when I met my husband, and she asked me one night about him. After I described him to her, she said, he's an engineer, and Irish, and plays the bagpipes. Oh, God. The woman hated all things Irish, but she did grow to love KJ. She may have been honest to a fault at times, but you always knew if you asked her opinion, you'd get the Gong's honest truth. Lesson 5, love is love. I can vividly remember more than 25 years ago, sitting at her kitchen table, talking about people being gay. She said, Rachel, people don't choose to be gay. No one chooses a life of hardship. As a teen in the 90s, still developing my own beliefs, I knew then she was right. Lesson 6, do what you love and do it well. As you are all quite aware, Gongs always worked, and she loved working. Not afraid to change careers multiple times in her life, she showed me that you can always pursue something new. Gongs was a woman of many talents and many stories. I am thankful that my mother included her in so much of our life. It truly does take a village to raise a child, and I am forever grateful that she was in mine. My theater-loving, world-traveling, job-changing self cherished my 42 years with her and will miss her every day. I love you, Gongs.
Anyone else have any stories before I go? Okay.
Story right. I hope I can. I'm gonna stand right here and do it. One night up in Philadelphia, we had a fashion show, and she was behind the counter saying very few words. She never said much, and we would just go on and do it. And then all of a sudden, there was no Edna. There was nobody up there, and we were like, we just walked our walk and kept on going. And sure enough, she came up the back of the stage, and it was a big stage. They had to climb to the aisle and had to get back up, and she continued right on talking. Lying. Couldn't believe she did that, but she did. That was funny.
Thank you. Yeah.
Gongs invited me one time to tea. I live nearby, so I walked over there for tea. She had it all set up like English tea, because I think she's English, right?
Yes.
English egg? Yeah. So I got to learn all the reasons why tea is the way it is when you do it in an English
Thank you, everyone. The most important thing my grandmother ever taught me was always do your crossword puzzles in pen. Whenever I went to Gongs' house growing up, I would always see the weekly crossword puzzle sitting on the table, partially filled out. Each week, she would get the Sunday paper, and after reading it, she would start to work on the crossword. It had to be the Philadelphia Inquirer, not the Courier Post. That one was too easy. She would work on the puzzle all week until the next Sunday brought a new one, and the process started over. As a kid, I preferred the comic section, of course. But as I got older, my curiosity grew, and I asked her what the puzzle was and how it worked. She taught me the nuances of the crosswords, the little inside jokes and puns the writers hid, and the subtle hints that help guide you to the right answers. Eager to begin, I picked up a pencil. She took it from me and handed me a pen instead. "But what if I make a mistake?" I asked. "You won't," she replied. "If you use a pencil, you'll put down the first thing that pops into your head without a second thought because you can erase it. With a pen, you'll only put down what you believe is right." It wasn't until years later that I understood the crossword-like nuances of what she was teaching me. Give thought to the decisions in your life, but once you make them, stand by them. And that was how Edna Harris lived her life. Born in November of 1929, she came into the world just days after the crash of Wall Street and the start of the Great Depression. She excelled in school, skipping 2 grades and graduating early, which allowed her to jump feet first into the workforce, and jump she did. She tried to create a list one time of the different jobs she had had in her life, and she got to about 13 before stopping, knowing there were others she had missed along the way. She was never afraid to try new things, moving from job to unrelated job that she had 0 experience in, but somehow made it seem like she'd been doing it her whole life. And sometimes she even held jobs that never existed before she had them. She would talk about her start at the Gloucester County Cable Company, where she was recruited to do sales in a time before home cable was a thing. At the end of the interview, they asked what she was expecting for a salary. Since this was a new position, she had nothing to go off of, so she just threw out a number. But they agreed too quickly, so she added on a couple benefits as well, and that stuck in their throat, as she used to say. Her favorite job to talk about was working at the Stetson Hat Factory, where she was a key punch operator. She was so proud of the fact that she worked with computers decades before the world even knew what that word was. It was a skill that she used well until after her 90th birthday, as she regularly used her home computer to email to keep in touch with friends and family. She also loved volunteer work, always ready to pitch in wherever she was needed. Whether at the Ritz Theater, helping guests to their seats to enjoy the stage as much as she did, or even at Cooper Hospital, where she would stun patients on a daily basis when they found out how old she was. She would help out the AARP during tax season while they offered free accounting services for seniors, which always surprised me because they held that in the library, and I was pretty sure she had been banned from all of those in South Jersey for not returning books. You would even find her at parties, helping to collect the dishes or throwing trash away or doing whatever she could to lend a hand. The word relax wasn't in her incredibly large vocabulary. All of these traits she passed on through her most important job, mother. Edna raised 3 incredible children that share those same values of hard work, dedication, and selflessness. Andrea, David, and Sandy will bend over backward to make sure you have a warm meal in your stomach, a roof over your head, or a place to go for Thanksgiving so you aren't alone. And they, in turn, have passed it on to another generation, and that generation to another still. We may never know the full impact of Edna Harris's legacy on history, but we do know it will be permanent, because just like her crosswords, she wrote it in pen. Thank you again to everyone for attending today to help us celebrate Edna. We hope you got a chance to look at the photos and watch the video of her amazing life. We would like to invite all of you to attend a luncheon for Edna at the Westmont Diner in Haddon Township. There are directions by the sign-in book in the back of the room. We hope to see you there. Thank you, and this concludes our services.